Good morning, SVA. It's Ariel and Brett, and we're here for Coffee Talk. And we are waiting for Annemarie from Disability Resources to join us today. We are excited to have her, and it looks like she just started following us, so she'll be joining us shortly. Oh, great. So she will be joining us any minute now. So thank you for watching us. Again, this is Coffee Talk. And I'm Brett. I'm not Brett. I'm
Hi.
Ariel. And that's Brett. And this is Annemarie from Disability Resources. Hi, Annemarie.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
We're really excited to have you. We've been having a lot of great guests, and we think that your office is so important to SVA and so important to the work that we do and that our students do. That we're so excited that you're able to join us.
Yeah, I'm very happy. Thank you for, including me in Coffee Talk. This is really cool.
Awesome. So we're gonna just start off with some questions. Anyone who's watching can ask questions as well. We'll put up any important information that Annemarie shares, such as like email addresses on our chat. So if you're watching later and you want to have this information, it will be on our chat as well. Yeah. So Brett, why don't you start us off with some questions?
So, Annemarie, do you want to tell us a little bit just what your role is and sort of what the role of disability resources at the school is?
Absolutely. So my job is I'm the coordinator. I'm one of the main point people students usually first reach out to, although everybody in our office, my associate director, Karen, is also super approachable as well. So don't let titles kind of fool you as a student, like reach out to our office in general. So our office is tasked with making sure that any student with a disability or any person with a disability also that comes to SVA as either a student or they are a community member coming to a campus-related event, the school is accessible. And what that means for a student with a disability is making sure that there are no barriers that would keep that person, either community member or student, from participating fully in their experience with SVA. So that is what our office is tasked with doing.
Awesome. It sounds like a lot that you do. Can you give us some understanding of really like what a disability looks like when you say disability? Is it physical disability? Is it emotional? Is it mental disability? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our office considers various types of disabilities. You have your physical, chronological health issues. That could be considered a disability. If a person has any mental health related challenges, that could be related as a disability. And even something like a student falling on winter break and breaking their leg, that could be considered a temporary disability. So that's how you kind of give an umbrella to disability. Our office takes it a step further where we have to apply legal case law, U.S. case law, with regards to disability. So we use the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act notes that a person with any physical or mental impairment that subsequently limits a major life activity is considered a person with a disability. So life activities are things like breathing, walking, talking, hearing, seeing, caring for oneself, performing manual tasks, or working as life activities that could be limited by some type of impairment. So we have to marry those two things with, of course, the student's experience to kind of assist and assess what the disability is. I think I answered your question. I know it's a lot.
You definitely answered my question, and it does seem like your office covers a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Annemarie, being from student health and counseling, our two offices intersect quite a bit, and people with anxiety and depression often will, or any other mental health issue, often come to us looking for disability and then come to your office. Can you give us a
Mm-hmm.
sense of, people may have a little bit more understanding of, for a physical disability, what an accommodation is, but for the more like mental health sphere
Yeah.
of things, like what does an accommodation look like?
That's a great question. So that's a really, we'll bridge all of this together. So I think maybe starting back with, how do you as a student say, I think I have a disability, or I know I have a disability, how do I get help from your office to assist me as a student? So the first thing that you would do as a student is reach out to us through our school page on the website, so sva.edu/disability resources. If you click on the little arrow that says requesting accommodations, you click on that fill form there, and you have to fill out that fill form in almost its entirety. It won't let you go beyond a certain point. Now, it does have a section at the bottom of that fill form to provide supporting documents to support your request. So if a student says to me, I have anxiety disorders, thank you for posting the link. I have an anxiety disorder, I need an accommodation, that's great. You can submit your request and disclose, yes, I have an anxiety disorder, and they may go to their care provider, whether it be their therapist or their counselor, and they can provide us documentation stating, I've met with this person, I've treated this person for their anxiety, I've noticed, and the student has noticed, these are where the student is struggling, and this is what we recommend to support the student. So once we have that kind of written down somewhere, we can sit with the student and assess what accommodations will be viable. Going back to your point, Brett, about how is a physical disability versus something with mental health, the accommodations are going to vary. So if a person has a visual impairment, for example, they may only need something like, sorry, the computer's going off. They may need something just like a screen reader to be able to participate in class, read materials. If a student has an anxiety disorder and they may be dealing with panic attacks and maybe they're not understanding what their triggers are yet, but they're working on their coping, we can maybe provide an accommodation if it's appropriate and reasonable. The student's allowed to step away from class for a moment, gather themselves, use their coping skills that they use in therapy, and then rejoin the group where it's not a distraction to them, to the class environment, or to the professor, so that it's a mutual understanding. When it comes to documentation, we want to get documentation from people that are long-standing supporting our students. So while health and counseling is there in the short term, if there is a crisis emergency or an instance of high stress, we do encourage students, if they're dealing with a lot of stress suddenly, speak to one of you lovely colleagues in the office to kind of help them manage in the moment. But when it comes to documentation, that should be coming from somebody long-term in their care. And if they're not in long-term care, maybe it's something new, especially with COVID. If you're dealing with a lot of things like depression or anxiety, this is the time now. You can come to health and counseling to get connected to somebody long-term, but overall, you need to take the responsibility to maintain long-term support so that if and when things come up, you know how to handle it and you know how to carry yourself when you're in different situations and environments. I feel like that was a lot, you guys. Check in with me on that.
It was definitely a ton of information, but a ton of really good information. And just to reiterate kind of what you said is that student health and counseling is here for our students. A lot of times we work with students to, maybe figure out if what they're going through does qualify as a disability.
Mm-hmm.
However, we don't write the letters that you would require because
Yep.
we do believe that a disability is something that could be more long-term, right? It's something that
Mm-hmm.
somebody may face not only right now and here, but throughout their lives. And we want to make sure that the student has that support throughout what they're going through. And so therefore,
exactly.
we don't have the ability because we don't have that ability to support them throughout
right.
the whole entire time at SVA.
Right.
So we do have a lot of really good therapists that we do refer to that can write the letters, that can give that long-term support.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And they are a lot of the clinicians I've seen referred from your office have worked with our office for a while, and they will be, very hands-on with the student and provide releases and say, if you need anything else to support the student, please contact me. So there is that open working relationship that as things change and progress for that student when they're in care, we can come back and reassess, and that it's not something solidified. Like, you don't apply for accommodation once and this is all you get. It's a long-term, long-standing conversation throughout your 4 years or 2 years, depending on your program at SVA. Like, we're here to support you. But that also goes back to, if you don't reach out and ask for help, you can't expect to get help. So we always encourage, if you're going through something, reach out to our office. If you're going through something with mental health and you're just not sure but you're struggling, reach out to student health and counseling. That's what our offices are here for. We're here to mitigate in that moment and help handle things. So once the student's approved, our office will provide letters to the student, and accommodations are not retroactive. So a student can be approved, at the end of August when the semester starts, and they could decide, I'm not going to give my letters to my professors until October 1st. That's great. You're totally allowed to do that. That's your personal preference. As a result, though, if there's an exam, for example, and you're approved for an exam accommodation between August and October, your professor is not legally required to provide you that accommodation if you didn't notify them in advance, because how can they do that if you don't notify them? So it's important to self-advocate very early. Give your letters ahead of time to the professors. If they have questions, they can always contact our office. And it's an important caveat to note that on the letters, no mention of a diagnosis or a disability is stated. That's all personal, HIPAA-related information. It's only shared if absolutely necessary, which 99.99999 times not needing to be disclosed. You don't need to provide your personal backstory to a professor to obtain an accommodation. If they're having difficulty, they could reach out to our office and we'll assist them with providing you, the student, the accommodation necessary. Just want to point that out.
You took the questions out of our mouths.
Good.
I know, Annemarie, that some students come to us and feel maybe a little embarrassed about asking for help, feel like they don't want to be treated differently by their professors, don't want, to have that affect their grade or the way that a professor thinks about them. What is your advice to a student that maybe feels that way?
That's a great question, and we see this a lot. Here's the truth. Statistically, globally, in the world, according to the World Health Organization, 1 in 5 people in the world have some form of disability. It could be physical, it could be mental health, it could be a learning-related disability. And in actuality, the majority of persons that come forward and say, I have a disability and need assistance, is like less than 5%. So there are a lot of people coming out and struggling with trying to get through things like school or work and trying to reach whatever their personal goals are. So I would encourage anybody that's concerned about the attitudes of other people and how that's going to impact them. Challenge yourself by saying this. Is it worth me to struggle for the next year, 2 years, 4 years through my program and not do as well as I could have done if I had the supports I needed? So those supports can be a game changer for a student. Just by having the ability, if they're going through anxiety, to just take a step back and leave the room for a moment, super helpful for many students. If a student has a learning disability, just having, approved time for exam accommodations could be the time needed for them to deal with both maybe testing anxiety and processing issues, that instead of them failing that exam, they pass that exam. And it's not giving them a leg up, it's just providing them the space that they need to do what they need to do. So I would, challenge a student, if you're thinking, well, I don't want anyone to know, or I don't want to be treated any special way. The point of accommodations is not to be treated in any special way or given a leg up. It's to give you the ability to take whatever thing that's in your way from doing your best, it gives you kind of a way to push that wall down, and then it's up to you on whether or not you do your best. So try to self-evaluate in that way. That's the best I could say for that one.
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, as you were talking too, you know, I think we've been talking a lot about people who maybe are, you know, this is their first time interacting with like a disability resources office, but for many students, they've had accommodations going back throughout high school or middle school or even younger, you know, had 529 plans through, you know, their younger years. So for those students, what's the process just for sort of getting that transferred over to the school? Because those people sort of have more longstanding, you know, resources.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's a great question. So the rule of thumb is you still register with our office through that fill form, and you can provide a copy of your plan. Typically, when you leave high school, there's usually like a final meeting and plan that states what the students' goals are for post high school into college or trade school, what have you, and it'll list those accommodations. So there, that gives that student the leg up to just kind of get that information and provide it to our office. Now, does that mean every single accommodation you received in high school is going to transfer? Not necessarily, because it really does base on what SVA has available for resources and what our office is able to provide. So there are certain things that don't transfer, but a majority of things do transfer. A majority of accommodations are usually nothing more than either like extra time or books in alternative format. It's really not a financial issue. There's that weird line where there's things we would love to have to make it easier, and that's great, but it also has to be reasonable within the school's resources. So we can only work within our confines of our resources, but a majority of those things transfer. You would just need to provide a copy of your plan to our office.
That's good to know. Annemarie, I know that there's other things also that your office does besides just getting accommodations. So can you list or explain some of the other things that your office does? Because I know that there's a lot of really great tools that students can use.
Yeah, that's a great point. So for any students, once they're registered with our office, we do provide coaching strategies meetings for students. So if you find you're struggling, maybe you went through your first year at SVA and you're like, I had a really difficult time keeping myself together for whatever reason, and you're registered with our office, you can meet with one of our staff members and we can provide you support with trying to figure out what's going to be the best method for you this coming semester to be prepared, whether that's time management planning or coming up with a study strategy or using certain accommodations maybe you decided not to use last semester or last year because you want to try to go without. There's no judgments here. We're here to help support you and figure that out. For the general school at large, we are here to provide support for any clubs and organizations that need assistance with making sure any events that they throw or provide the student body or the public that it is accessible. So we are legally required to make sure that our events are accessible or as accessible as possible. So we can assist different clubs and student organizations if they decide to throw, an art gallery function. How do we make sure it's accessible for people with physical limitations or hearing impairment or visual impairments so that they're able to participate just as much as anybody else? So we're also here if you need assistance with that. We're happy to help support, clubs and organizations on campus to provide those services as well.
Great. Yeah, I know the coaching has been really helpful for some of our students. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Definitely. But we can't support, I wish we could provide everybody coaching support, but you have to be registered with our office to obtain coaching support. So just important, if you feel like that's something you may need, register with our office to see if we can assist.
Good point.
So, Annemarie, I know sometimes, we get questions like, is your office still open over the summer? Like, how are you doing things virtually? And what's that transition been like for your office, and sort of what services are you still able to provide over the summer now?
Yep, that's a great question. We're pretty much running as business as usual. Thankfully, our entire system is mostly digitized. So we have been very lucky with how things timed that we were able to move really quickly from in-person meetings to doing meetings via Zoom. So when it comes to one-to-one coaching, we've been able to continually provide that because our system is all digitized when you registered for accommodations. We're getting everything through our electronic system Accommodate. So there's no worry about having to physically mail or fax things. The one thing we are recommending for students right now, if you're registering over the summer for either summer classes and you need accommodations, or if you're registering for fall and you're an incoming freshman, first off, welcome. Second, have any of those supporting documents if you didn't provide it when you uploaded your application to our office for accommodations. Email them directly to disabilityresources@sva.edu, and we can attach that to your request. The only reason why we do that right now, being remote, is that we have to verify it is coming from your provider directly, so that it's just an honesty kind of policy situation. Unfortunately, that's what we have to do right now, but it's okay. So far, everybody has been having a pretty easy go of it. Professors have been working with students with summer classes that they're having, super easy times transitioning any accommodations online. And we really haven't had, thankfully, knock on wood, any hookups so far. So it's been a really positive experience. If you need to reach out to our office at any time, I do highly recommend emailing the main inbox. All of the staff have access to the main inbox. If you prefer a verbal phone call, put your phone number in that email and one of us will reach out to you. We do have our office numbers forwarded a certain amount, but not everything is forwarded, so email is the easiest method. And we can meet via Zoom for intakes or just to chat. If you have questions, we can make those things happen.
Awesome. And I did put up the link. The first email address was not correct. The second one is correct.
Yep.
So, and again, anyone who's watching, if they want to ask a question now, they can as well. Is there, like, Annemarie, is there a myth that you think is the biggest myth for disability resources, or something that maybe you get a lot of students come to you and you have to explain is either not correct or maybe a misunderstanding about your office?
I think there's this myth in general that having a disability is, quite frankly, a bad thing, and we don't talk about it enough or normalize it enough. And I think it goes back to your earlier points and questions about, will people look down upon me or, give me any flack for not being a specific way? And I think that's the biggest myth. It's almost like having a disability and being able to say, no, this is what I need, is actually a really great thing, because it equips a person to start learning how to self-advocate now, so that when they leave SVA, unfortunately, because there's going to be a day you have to leave us, and you go out into the working world, you need to be able to self-advocate. So if you start doing that now versus later, you're going to have an easier time, because I can be here, or Karen can be here, or any of our staff members and student affairs can be here to assist you with how to self-advocate. We're here to support you in that. And oftentimes that disability is kind of looked down upon. It's something to be shamed, depending, especially where your cultural background is from. And quite frankly, the neurodivergent members of our population that are artists are phenomenal folks. It's just learning how to self-navigate, whether it be your own brain, your own physical disability, or your own mental health, challenges. You can work within what you have. You just have to see it as something that can be a strength and not necessarily a weakness. So I think that's like the biggest myth, that disability can be a bad thing or a sign of weakness. It can actually be a real sign of strength.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much for saying that so beautifully.
Welcome.
Annemarie, is there anything about your office that we kind of missed or anything that you wanted to make sure to get the word out about?
Right now we are still, and that's a great question, but thank you. We are still taking, applications for accommodations now. So this is kind of the time to do it, especially if you're a new incoming student, if you're needing any type of accommodations, residential or otherwise, this is the time to set those things up now because deadlines will start coming out for Res Life, for any registration for classes if you haven't already registered. And we're asking students, if you're not registered yet for classes, make sure you are registered because we can't even pull you into the system until you are registered. So if you haven't registered for classes, reach out to academic advisement. If you haven't heard from your advisor, please make sure you're registered and you're squared away there so that we can assist you with the next step, which is accommodations in the classroom. Other than that, while we're not physically in the office, we're available digitally. So if you have questions or concerns, hit the main inbox, send us an email. We can, schedule a Zoom call, and we're still providing services. We're just doing it remotely. I think we pretty much covered everything so far, which is pretty good.
Yeah, you gave us a ton of information. I think we always like to end our coffee talks with a little bit more of like a fun question. And, COVID has been now going on for like almost 3 months, or maybe 3 months already. I lose track of time. And we'd like to ask all of our guests, like, what is like one fun thing you've done to take care of yourself, or like what is something that you've maybe done during COVID that you haven't done before? Because we're all kind of in the same boat that way.
Right. That's a great question. And self-care, I know we all deal with that as like a buzzword in our field, but I've actually come to really understand what that personally means for me. I think self-care for everybody is different. I've really taken this lovely time we've had off to figure out how to cook simply, like make a really good meal, but really quickly, because let's be honest, when you're done after like an 8-hour day and a commute, you really don't want to be standing over your stove or your oven cooking. So just finding simple recipes that are very satisfying and quick to make have been a real fun thing to find during quarantine. It's made quarantine kind of in a way worth it, I think, to kind of deal with that self-care aspect.
That sounds like a really good plan. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Brett, any more questions that you can think of? I think we've asked a lot.
I know, yeah, we gave out a lot of info. So just maybe it's just a reminder for anyone watching, you can re-watch these stories afterwards. They're posted on SVA Student Health's Instagram page, so you can come back and re-watch them. I know we talked about a lot today, so if you missed something, that's a good resource. Annemarie, what's the Disability Resources Instagram page?
The Disability Resources Instagram page is SVA Disability Resources, all one word, all lowercase. So that's our handle. We were typically doing like online postings if students were interested in submitting artwork, because we want to support any artists that identify as having a disability. So that was kind of the main reason we had started the page in the first place, and to promote any services. So we're hoping to do that again in the fall. So again, if any of our students that have disabilities want to, feature their artwork, they can do the submission through our our website, and we do send out like email blasts and stuff. So definitely if you're interested and you want to share your work, you don't have to self-identify if you don't want to. If you want to submit anonymously, you're welcome to do that. But our Instagram page is not as busy, unfortunately, but we will be here to like support other school-related organizations, especially health and counseling, and we'll kind of cross-advertise so that we know that resources are available within our community.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And
You're welcome.
just a reminder for those who are watching as well. So yes, this will be on our Instagram page. We save it under highlights as well. It's saved to IGTV. So there's so many chances for you to rewatch this amazing interview. I know Annemarie gave a ton of information. I'll probably rewatch it just so I can have all this information. So it will be available for our students, not only today to watch, but to watch, in the future. And then we do have every Tuesday, we are doing and continuing morning meditation. And it's the same thing. So we do morning meditation at 10 o'clock on Tuesday mornings, but you can watch it throughout the day, throughout the week, whenever you need. And we are doing programming at Student Health and Counseling, even in the summer. So keep an eye out for what we're doing, our supports. We like to give as many resources as possible through Instagram. That's really where a lot of our information is. So keep checking us out. Check out Disability Resources Instagram as well. And Annemarie, thank you so much. It was so informative. I feel like I learned a ton.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm glad. Thank you both very much. I miss you both.
Miss you too. And we miss all of our students. We can't wait to see everyone. So thanks again, and have a good day, everyone.
You too. Bye, everybody.
Bye.